Welcome to the Sports Legends, where you're going to get the most in-depth sports breakdowns on YouTube. I'm your host, Bull. Today, we're going to be projecting the fastest players at the 2025 NFL Combine based off of their speed in miles per hour from their college years. Now, a lot of folks might think that you can just say, hey, whoever the fastest person is in terms of miles per hour is going to be the fastest person with the 40-yard dash, but that's just not how that works. The 40 is really about how quickly can you get up to your max speed, and also about the way that you train. Did you have really good people that taught you how to run it? Because there is a certain science in how you run that. So we'll be breaking all this stuff down, and we'll actually tell you at the end who has a chance to break Xavier Worthy's record of a 4.21 in this year's NFL Combine. As always, y'all, please do make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. All right, let's start right here looking at players from previous NFL Combines and how their speed in miles per hour translated to their 40 times. So starting off with quarterback Anthony Richardson, his average top speed was a 20.3 miles per hour, and his overall top speed was a 21.5 miles per hour. He ran a 4.43. Next is going to be running back Jalen Wright. His average top speed was a 21.9, and his overall top speed was a 22.9, which is extremely fast. So his 40 time was a 4.38. Next, we have wide receiver Xavier Worthy, who ran the 4.21. His average top speed was a 22.2 miles per hour, and his overall top speed was a 22.5 miles per hour. Now, this is where things, I do believe, for y'all, should start to get interesting. This is what I was talking about. The 40 is not necessarily an indication of who the fastest player is. It's just about who gets to their top speed the fastest, who runs the 40 the fastest. And y'all can see the rest of these numbers. I try to do every single group just so we, can kind of correlate that as we go throughout this video. Now let's talk about the quarterbacks that did get invited to the 2025 NFL Combine. And it's going to be the same thing for everybody. It's just about who got invited. Some of these players won't run. Some of these players won't show up and all of that type of stuff. We're just looking at who got invited and who could potentially end up running the fastest 40 time at each individual position. So starting off at the top, we have Jalen Milroe. We're seeing him with an average of a 22.2 miles per hour, and then his top is 22.9. So for me, I'm thinking, man, he's probably going to be a sub 4.4 guy. I would not be surprised if he runs maybe in the lower 4.3s. And really, this might be the fastest quarterback combine that we've seen maybe ever, because I think that we've got four guys right up here at the top that could probably run 4.4, somewhere in the 4.4 range and under that. And that would be the first time that that's ever happened. So the next one would be Riley Leonard, who's his average speed is at a 21.2 and his top is a 22. So very, very fast player. Now, again, you got to look at how are these players going to start. That's a big part of running, 40-yard dashes and getting timed on it. It's about how you start. So I think that Jalen Milroe, being such a great athlete, I think that his start will be better than Riley Leonard's. I'm not saying that Riley Leonard isn't a good athlete. Obviously, he's very fast, but that's his top speed. I've never really seen him have that first step burst, and that's going to be a major factor. So next we have Will Howard. Now, 20.6 miles per hour is his average, and then his top is 20.9. So obviously, very fast player once he gets going, but here's another one. I don't think that his first step is going to be, mind-blowing. So I would say that, number two and number three probably going to be somewhere, I would say, like in the low 4.5s, but they had the potential, okay, just based off of the training leading up to this point, to get into the 4.4s. And then last player that we'll talk about is going to be Jackson Dart, 20.6 miles per hour, and his top is 22 miles per hour. So we've got a lot of fast players just in this position group at quarterback coming up in the 2025 NFL Draft. Y'all can see that Mr. Sanders is not listed here, but he would have been right at number 11, okay? So I don't remember exactly what his numbers were, but he's slightly slower than Cam Ward overall. And this isn't, a huge deal for most of these quarterbacks, not to go too deep into that part of it, but it's really more about how do they look when they're throwing and things like that. Something else that I did not bring up is that all these players are going to have GPS tracking systems on them. So I think that the 40-yard dash thing, it's more for the fans. Obviously, they're going to look at every single metric, talking about all the, scouts, coaches, and GMs that are up there, but they're going to be looking a lot closer at what their actual miles per hour is at the combine. And that's going to tell them who they feel like is the fastest, especially going through different individual drills. Next are the running backs. And up at the top, we have Jarquez Hunter, who 22.4 miles per hour is his average. 22.9 is his top. He's a guy that I definitely expect to be in the low 4.3s. He could probably break 4.3 and get into those 4.2s. Next, we have Donovan Edwards from Michigan, man. He 22.2 miles per hour average and 23.1 top. 23.1 would be tied for the fastest of all the players that got invited to the 2025 NFL Combine. So he has a great chance to also run in the low 4.3s, possibly 4.2s. Next, we have Omarion Hampton with an average speed of a 22.1, top speed of 23 miles per hour. This is a crazy deep running back draft class with no questions. I think that this is another one. They might break some daggum records at this NFL Combine because there's a whole lot of Blazers. You know, we also have Trevion Henderson, Ashton Genty. I know some of y'all are probably wondering, what is his 40 time going to be? Looking at this, man, a 21.8 mile per hour average with a 22.3 top. I think that he's a guy that starts pretty fast, so I can see him having a really good 40 time. I'm thinking 4.4s. You know, that's probably the range that he's going to run in. Caleb Johnson, he's another one I would say probably 4.4. Now, Dylan Sampson is interesting because I think that he could probably get into the 4.3s, like the mid to lower 4.3s. He's a guy that, you know, he's a true track guy. Several of these players will also have been true track guys, just, you know, from the high school years and things like that. But he's one that I would not be surprised if he broke a 4.3. Really, anybody on this list at this point, they could probably all break 4.3. My question is, who's going to, you know, break that 4.2? Who's going to get into that range? And I would say that the best option for that would be the top two. All right, now let's talk about these wide receivers, man. We've got a really fast player up at the top, Dante Thornton Jr., and he's like 6'5", 215 pounds. I think that he's going to get his draft stock up significantly coming up at this NFL Combine. So he's been clocked as fast as 23 miles per hour. His average speed is a 22.5. That is blazing. Okay, he's a long strider, so I'm not sure if his 40 time is going to translate necessarily to what his top speed is. But like we talked about, with that GPS tracking system that everybody's got to have out there at the Combine, scouts, coaches, and GMs, they're going to see his speed, you know, his real life speed. And they're going to say, oh, yeah, we can do something with him. So I would not be surprised to see him get into the 4.3s. Now, if he had a faster start or if he has a really good start, then he will be a 4.2 guy. No questions asked. So lower 4.3s for Dante Thornton. And then we have Isaiah Bond from Texas, man. Average speed of 22.4 miles per hour. And then a top speed of 22.8. He's another one. Lower 4.3s, possibly 4.2s. Then we have Jordan Watkins. Same thing here. I'm thinking, you know, lower 4.3s, possibly 4.2s. You know, and something else that I really like about most of these players is you're seeing that their average speed is very close to their top speed. That's a very strong indication that their 40 time is going to be good, because understand this, y'all, like whenever we're looking at these speeds, you know, in terms of miles per hour, that's going to be based off of what they did on the field in college. So sometimes you're running some shorter routes at 5 yards. Sometimes you're going to be going deep for 50 yards, right? So seeing that the average, right, and of course that is the average top, but just seeing that lets me know that they're probably going to do a really good job running their 40s. Next player, man, I want to talk about Jalen Noel some. I really like him. I think he's going to be a 4.3 guy. But after that, man, Tej Johnson coming from Oregon, he's a guy that first step instant. I think he could definitely break, you know, 4.2. I think that he could get into that higher 4.2 range. Now, his top speed, yeah, it's really, really good, but it's not as fast as some of the other skill players that we'll be talking about today. But again, it's more about how is he going to start. I think that he's going to have a tremendous start. I think that Trey Harris could run a really nice 40. Again, all these guys will probably end up being in the 4.3 range. Luther Burden, if he can come in and run, I would say in the 4.3s, again, we're not really talking about that today, but just to throw this out there, I think that he could potentially be a first round draft pick. He's got a lot of nice things whenever you watch his film, and P and I broke him down before in a previous video, but look out for these guys, man, to come in, you know, especially these skill players, wide receivers, secondary players, maybe even linebackers. I would say everybody, but specifically those groups, running back, look out for them to just look absolutely great running their 40s. So we could say, again, that their actual speed of miles per hour should translate to their 40 times. Next is the tight ends, and we don't see any of the projected top draft picks at this position on this list, but that's fine. They're still going to get drafted high because it's not all about that 40 time. And I don't even think that for tight ends is necessarily just about the speed. Now, some teams like to flex their tight ends out. Really, most teams probably want to do that. But if you're talking about like a throwback tight end that needs to be able to block and do all that type of stuff, the ones that are projected at the top of this year's draft have all those skill sets. Now, I'm not going to say that these other players don't, because I haven't watched every single one of them play, but most of them probably don't. Most of these guys will be more like a bigger wide receiver body. So either way, up the top, we have Joshua Simon with an average of 20.4 miles per hour, and his top is at 20.8. I'm thinking he's probably going to run somewhere in the 4.5 range. You know, could be lower 4.5s. He could potentially even break into the 4.4 range. Something else that you'll notice with these players is that their listed weights will probably be a little bit less at the combine. Now, with some players, it's just because their school might have boosted up their weight some, but for most of them, it's going to be intentional. You want to cut that weight so that you look better. Like you're out there in shorts and stuff. You want to look like a really good athlete, and cutting that weight and just getting as lean as possible can help you to do that. So don't be surprised if, he comes in a little bit up under his weight and runs a really good time, maybe even faster than what I'm projecting today. Next, we have Luke Lachey. Okay, so his average top speed is the same as Joshua Simon at 20.4 miles per hour, but his top is faster, so 21 miles per hour. He could actually run a faster 40 based off of that. Next, we have Elijah Arroyo from the U. So average of 20.4 miles per hour, and his top is 22.3. He's another one, man. I think that he's really, really fast. He's probably going to end up being the fastest overall. But what I wanted to do here, y'all, is just try to put this in order just based off of their miles per hour speed. But if I had to guess, I would say he would probably be the fastest tight end at this year's draft. And I really would not be surprised to see him get into like the mid to low 4.4 range. And that's going to look really good, I think, for his draft stock. Now let's show these big boys some love, man. The offensive line. Several players that, you have to be very impressed with these guys that are this big and they can move this fast. So up at the top, we have Jonah, and I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name because I'll probably end up butchering it, but his average top speed is at 18.6 miles per hour, and his overall top speed is at 19.4 miles per hour. That is extremely impressive to be that big and be able to move that fast. Next, we have Caleb Rogers. His average top speed is at 17.9. His top is at 19.3. And I want to talk about Will Campbell down here at number 7. Also plays tackle. His average top speed is at 17 miles per hour. And then his overall top speed is 18.6. So just as far as the times that these guys might run, I would say probably everybody up here is going to be, close to about a 5 flat, probably under a 5 flat for the top 5 for sure. And then the bottom 5 will be very, very close to it. So for these guys, it's going to be more about that 10-yard split. How do they look getting off of the football? It's not so much about how do you look coming or, going all the way down the field. And again, like we keep on saying, it's going to be more about how do they look just as far as the GPS tracking as they're going through their on the field drills. Now it's time to talk about one of my favorite groups to watch at the NFL Combine, defensive ends. And it's a lot of great athletes inside of this group. Really, I think, the argument could be made that D-ends and maybe even more so defensive tackles could be the best athletes on a football field, pound for pound, because these guys are huge and look at the speeds that they're running. So up at the top, we have Steve Linton, whose average top speed is at 20.9 miles per hour. His overall top speed is 22.2 miles per hour. So these guys are just as fast as a lot of those skill players, and they're going to be significantly bigger for the most part. Next, we have Abdul Carter, projected to be the first edge rusher taken in the 2025 NFL draft. His average top speed is at 20.8 miles per hour, and his overall top is 21.5. So I would say that for these top two, I'm thinking 4.4s, man, especially just because edge rushers typically have a really quick first step. So their speeds should correlate to their times. All right. Next, we have Josiah Stewart from Texas A&M. Man, I've been seeing a lot of stuff about him, and I'm starting to love him more and more, especially once I found out just how fast he actually is. I think he's close to like 300 pounds. He might be over 300 pounds, and he can get after that passer. So his average top speed is at 19.9 miles per hour, and his overall top is 20.7. He's another one that I'm thinking, mid to low 4.5s, potentially 4.4. But if I had to pick one player that I feel like would actually be the fastest out of this whole group, it's got to be James Pierce Jr. because look at his top speed, 23 miles per hour. Like we said to start this show off, the fastest overall is at 23.1. That's amongst all players that got invited to the 2025 NFL Combine. So he's a guy that, even though his average is sitting down at a 19.5, I think that with the training and things like that, he's a player that could get up to, like a 4.3. And that should significantly increase his draft stock because he has kind of taken a few steps back for whatever reason. I feel like he's a guy that is going to make himself millions of dollars coming up here in a few short days. Next, let's take a look at the DTs, man. Hey, look, I love the big dudes. I love the trench play because like we just touched on, these guys are incredible athletes. They're big, they're fast, they're strong, they're powerful. They're asked to do a lot, and sometimes people tend to skip over that. But either way, I'm very excited to watch them go to work as well. So up at the top, we have Darius Alexander, whose average top speed is an 18.9 miles per hour. His overall top is 20.4. Next, we have Omar Norman Lott from the University of Tennessee. Average top speed is at 18.3, and his top is at 20 miles per hour. So all these guys, y'all, are going to be close to or over 300 pounds. Some of them will be way over 300 pounds. Like we can actually kind of skip down and take a look at Nazir Stackhouse, who's sitting right there at number 3. He's like 320 something pounds, and average top speed is 18.3 miles per hour. Overall top is the fastest out of anybody that got invited as far as DTs go to the NFL Combine, 20.5 miles per hour. That is a ridiculous athlete, and that's a big part of the reason that the University of Georgia has been so dominant because they have a lot of dudes just like that on their roster. But yeah, I'm excited to see what these guys do. We'll see what they run. It's kind of hard to project it. Yeah, they're going to have a good first step, but it's not going to be nearly what the edge rushers would be. So I'm going to say that we might have a guy that could get into the 4 or 5 range this season. Not quite sure who that's going to be. I'm not going to say that it's going to be Stackhouse just because, man, his first step is good, but I don't think that it's quite that good. I could see like an Omar Nomalai getting there. I could maybe see a Darius Alexander getting there. Let me see. Who else do we have on here that could potentially do something like that? It's really not anybody else that I would look at and say, yeah, I'm looking out for them to, get into the 4 or 5 range. But man, listen, to be able to do that over 300 pounds and, probably going to bench 20 something plus reps at 225, man, listen, I love to watch these guys go to work. But let's go on to the next one. This is another group that I love watching go to work at the NFL Combine, the linebackers. So up the top, we have Power Echols, which is a just brilliant football name, by the way, with an average top speed of 21.3 miles per hour, and his top speed is 21.4. So like we talked about, whenever those numbers are very, very close, you know that it's going to translate to the 40. At least that's what we think should happen. So I'd say he's a guy that could probably get into the, mid to low 4.4s, maybe upper 4.3s, which is just disgusting because these are some more guys that have really good size and they move very, very well. Next at number 2 is Esmiel Munden Jr. from the University of Georgia. Average top speed is 20.8 miles per hour. His overall top is 22.4. So he's a guy that's long and lean. He's going to have a very quick start. Definitely expecting for him to be lower 4.4s, probably, higher 4.3s, maybe even mid to higher 4.3s. He's going to run and test very well at the 2025 NFL Combine. Next, we have Jack Kaiser, average top speed of 20.6 miles per hour, overall top 21.7. I'm going to say that right here, probably, mid 4.4s to, maybe lower 4.5, something like that, just based off of what I've seen from him on film and things like that. But, there's several other players that you absolutely have to love. And down at number 10, Mr. Jahad Campbell, he's projected to be the number 1 overall linebacker taken in the 2025 NFL Draft. His average top speed is 20 miles per hour, but his overall top is 21.2. He's another one that even though he's bigger, I think he's like 6'3", close to 240 pounds. He's probably going to come in at about 230, maybe 225. And I think that he's another one that could definitely break, I would say into the 4.4s because he looks really good, really fluid, running as an athlete. Last group that we'll be talking about today is the secondary, a group that everyone loves to watch because they will be the most fluid athletes and they typically run the best times in pretty much every single category. So up at the top, we have cornerback Bill Halcone, and his average top speed is a 22.1. His overall top is 22.3. Next, we have safety Nick Eminwari, who has an average top speed of 22 miles per hour and an overall top of 23 miles per hour. Both of these players, I feel like, could break into the 4.2s. They're definitely going to be 4.3, no questions asked. And talking about Nick, man, he's a guy that is projected to be a first-round draft pick. And I think that with his 40 time, probably get into the 4.2s like what he's talked about. He's probably going to be a top, 15, 16, 17 sort of a draft pick just because, man, he's got everything else that you would look for in a safety. And safety is an extremely important position in the game of football on all levels, but especially in the NFL. Next, we have Quincy Riley, cornerback. Average top speed is 21.9. Overall top is 22.9. Then we have Travis Hunter, who we have not talked about at all up to this point, but his average top speed is 21.8 and his overall top is a 22.2. So I think that he's going to be a 4.3 guy. Really, everyone that we're looking at on this list, they should all be 4.3. Again, the question is who's going to be the fastest? My money's going to be on Nick Eminwari. I think that he's going to be, maybe the fastest player at the entire combine. Speaking of which, let's talk about the 10 players that have the best chance to break Xavier Worthy's record of a 4.21. And up at the top, we can see what his numbers look like in terms of miles per hour. So his average was at a 22.2, and then his top was at a 22.5. So Dante Thornton is a guy that we talked about earlier. If he gets off to a very good start with his 40, he can definitely break that record because his top end speed is going to be faster than in Xavier Worthy, and he's significantly bigger. Again, 6'5", about 215 pounds. He's going to turn a whole lot of heads at this year's combine. Do not forget his name. Next, we have Mr. Isaiah Bond. I think that he could do it for sure. He's going to have a much better start than I think Dante Thornton would get off to. So Bond might have a faster 40 time, but again, Dante Thornton is probably the fastest overall on this list. Outside of, I would say Trey Harris and then Torrey Horton, both of those guys being like 6'3" and moving the way that they do, they could also, break this record. But I think that the player with the best opportunity to break it would be wide receiver Tez Johnson right here at number 6. So his average top speed is 22.1. His overall top is 22.6. But his start is going to be tremendous. He's a guy that is built to run the 40-yard dash just like Worthy was. And I also think that, like we touched on before, Nick Eminwari would have a chance. Arian Smith could also have that chance. He's going to get off to a good start. We're seeing that his average top speed is 22 miles per hour, and then his overall top is 22.5. When they're close like that, you know that their speed is going to translate. So that's it for this video. I hope that y'all did enjoy it. If you learned something, if you like what we do on this channel, please do make sure to like and subscribe because we're still trying to grow. And also share it with as many people as you possibly can. Invite them on over here. And P and I will be seeing y'all on the next one. Thanks so much. Peace.